You know, there's a saying I learned the hard way. The market doesn't destroy traders. Traders destroy themselves. When I first walked into a brokerage office, I didn't understand that truth. I wasn't thinking about risk or discipline or psychology. I was just mesmerized. The hum of the telegraph machines, the rhythmic chatter of clerks calling out numbers, the endless stream of ticker tape spilling across the desk. It all felt like the heartbeat of something bigger than life. Every flicker, every price change felt alive, like a whisper meant only for me. I believed I could listen closely enough, study long enough, and eventually hear the secrets others missed. I believed I could outthink the market. For a while, I even did. My first few trades were small victories. A few points here, a quick profit there. But those small wins are dangerous. They don't teach you the truth. They feed your ego. They whisper in your ear that you're special, that you've figured out something the rest of the world hasn't. I started believing that story. I thought the market was predictable. That success was just a matter of intelligence and courage. But courage without control is just recklessness dressed in confidence. I didn't know that yet. Every day I walked into that brokerage room, I felt like a soldier entering battle. My pulse would race as the tape started moving. The numbers weren't just numbers to me. They were destiny unfolding. I thought I was in control, but the truth was, I was addicted. Addicted to movement, to noise, to the illusion of action. When I won, I felt invincible. When I lost, I doubled down to get even. I didn't realize it then, but the market wasn't testing my intelligence. It was testing my emotions, and I was failing miserably. The first time I truly lost, not a small setback, but a devastating hit. I remember sitting in silence long after the trading floor had cleared. The ticker still rattled faintly in the background, but it felt like a taunt. Every number that printed felt like it was laughing at me. My hands trembled, not from the loss itself, but from the realization that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. That's when I understood something that would stay with me for the rest of my life in this business. You don't trade against the market. You trade against yourself. I had been blind to my own weaknesses. Greed made me impatient. Fear made me impulsive. Pride made me deaf to warning signs. The market didn't have to defeat me. I was doing that all on my own. And that's the truth most traders never learn until it's too late. When I look back, I realize that the market was never the problem. The market was just a mirror. It reflected everything inside me. My hopes, my arrogance, my insecurity. Every loss I took wasn't punishment. It was feedback. Every time I tried to force a trade that wasn't there, I was really trying to force certainty in a world that doesn't offer any. That's what destroys traders. Not the volatility, not the uncertainty, but their inability to live with it. For years, I chased the illusion of easy money. The idea that if I could just spot the right pattern, the right signal, I'd never lose again. I tried everything. New strategies, faster information, better analysis. But nothing fixed the real problem, because the problem wasn't out there. It was inside. I was fighting the market when I should have been studying myself. The hardest lesson I ever learned was patience. I used to think waiting meant weakness, that sitting still meant missing opportunity. But the truth is, money isn't made by trading. It's made by waiting. Waiting for the market to align with your conviction. Waiting for confirmation instead of chasing noise. Waiting for the right time, not the first time. It took me years to understand that discipline is freedom. Most traders think discipline means limitation, like it stops you from acting. But discipline doesn't cage you, it frees you. Because when you have rules, real rules, you no longer live in constant anxiety. You don't chase every flicker on the chart. You don't let greed whisper in your ear. You don't panic when the market turns against you, because you already know what to do. You don't react emotionally. You respond strategically. That's the difference between a gambler and a professional. A gambler bets. A professional waits. A gambler tries to predict. A professional prepares. I wasn't born a professional. I became one only after losing enough to humble me. There was a time when I couldn't tell the difference between confidence and ego. When I made a winning trade, I thought it was proof I was smarter than everyone else. But the market doesn't care about your intelligence. It doesn't care about your education, your experience, or your past victories. The moment you think you're above it, it will drag you back down and remind you who's boss. And I learned that lesson again and again, until it was carved into my soul. Conviction is important, yes, but conviction without humility is death. When I took a position, I learned to take it with full commitment, but not blind arrogance. I learned to always respect the possibility that I could be wrong. Because the moment you lose that respect, the market will show you just how wrong you can be. People used to ask me, "Jesse, what's your secret? How do you know when to buy or sell?" And I'd smile, because there's no real secret. The only secret is mastering yourself. My success didn't come from discovering some hidden formula. It came from learning how to stop fighting the natural rhythm of the market. I stopped trying to control it and started flowing with it. I used to chase trades because I was afraid of missing out. Now I let trades come to me. I used to react to every price move with emotion. Now I watch quietly until the market tells me the truth. That shift, from chasing to waiting, changed everything. Because once you stop trying to outsmart the market and start trying to align with it, the chaos turns into rhythm. The noise becomes music. The market is like the ocean, unpredictable, vast and powerful. You can't fight it, but if you learn to ride its waves, it will carry you farther than you ever imagined. Every trader who's ever succeeded has learned the same truth. It's not about being right, it's about being consistent. Anyone can be right once. The real professionals are the ones who stay disciplined long enough to be right over time. Consistency doesn't come from talent. It comes from repetition, from doing the right thing, even when it's boring, from following your plan, even when the temptation to break it feels irresistible, from taking small losses without anger and small gains without greed. That's what separates the winners from the losers. There were days when I made nothing, when I'd stare at the tape for hours and not place a single trade. But those were often my most profitable days. Because every trade you avoid out of discipline is a loss you don't have to take. Every temptation resisted is capital preserved. That's the hidden profit most traders never see. The profit of restraint. The market doesn't reward noise, it rewards silence. It doesn't pay the loudest or the boldest. It pays the most patient. And once you understand that, trading stops being stressful. It becomes peaceful. You stop trying to chase certainty, and you start respecting probability. You stop chasing money, and you start protecting capital. That's when you realize the real game isn't about winning trades. It's about surviving long enough for the odds to favor you. I remember the first time I truly understood what patience meant. It wasn't during a win, it was during a loss. I had entered a position too early, convinced that my timing was perfect. I ignored the signals, ignored the noise, ignored my own rules. I thought conviction meant stubbornness, that holding on was strength. But the market taught me something brutal that day. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is let go. I took the loss, stepped back, and sat in silence. It wasn't the money that hurt me, it was the realization that I had betrayed my own discipline. That pain changed me. You see, the market doesn't punish mistakes. It punishes pride. A mistake can be corrected, but pride blinds you to correction. The moment I started believing that I could never be wrong, I was already halfway to destruction. Conviction without humility is arrogance, and arrogance, in this game, is fatal. The market doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care how much you've studied, how hard you've worked, or how confident you are. It will break you the moment you stop respecting it. I started treating every trade like a test of my character, not just my skill. Every decision became an opportunity to prove to myself that I could stay calm when everything around me was chaos. Because that's what the market is. Organized chaos. It moves in waves, it breathes in cycles. It tempts you with motion and misleads you with patterns. You think you see logic, but what you really see is emotion. Yours and everyone else's, written in numbers. And that's when I realized the market isn't moved by facts or figures. It's moved by people. By fear, by greed, by hope, by panic. The ticker tape isn't a machine, it's a heartbeat. Once that truth sank in, I stopped looking for secrets in the charts. The real secret was inside me. It wasn't about predicting the market. It was about mastering myself. I learned that my biggest enemy wasn't volatility or uncertainty. It was impatience. My need to act, to trade, to do something, anything, just to feel in control. But the market doesn't reward movement, it rewards control. It rewards stillness. There were days when I sat there watching prices move wildly up and down, feeling my pulse rise with every tick. I'd want to jump in, to grab the opportunity, to prove I could catch it. But then I'd remember, not every wave is meant to be ridden. Some are meant to be observed. Some are meant to be survived. And the longer I waited, the clearer the picture became. Because when the noise fades, the truth emerges. That's when I made my best trades. Not when I was excited, but when I was calm. I learned to respect the rhythm of the market the way a sailor respects the ocean. You can't control the tide, but you can learn to ride it. You can't fight the storm, but you can navigate through it. The ocean doesn't care how brave you are. It only rewards those who understand its flow. The market is the same. When you stop fighting it and start listening, it begins to speak. And that's when you start to see what others miss. You begin to notice that the market has moods. Quiet mornings where it hums gently. Violent afternoons where it roars. Deceptive evenings where it lures traders into traps. You begin to feel the shift in tone, the pulse of momentum. That's when trading stops being numbers and starts being intuition. Not emotion, but instinct. An instinct born from experience, from pain, from observation. There's a strange peace that comes with this kind of understanding. You stop chasing. You stop fearing. You start moving with purpose. Every trade becomes deliberate. Every loss becomes acceptable. Every win becomes just another step forward. That's when trading becomes art, not science. People often think trading is about intelligence. It's not. It's about endurance. It's about surviving your own emotions long enough to make rational decisions. It's about knowing when to act and when to do nothing. It's about walking away when your instincts tell you to, even if your ego screams otherwise. And most of all, it's about learning to sit still while others lose their minds. I've seen men far smarter than me lose everything because they couldn't stop themselves from overtrading. I've seen fortunes vanish not because of bad strategies, but because of impatience. The desire to always be doing something. That's the poison. Because in this game, sometimes the hardest work you'll ever do is waiting. Waiting for the market to come to you, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the moment when everything aligns. When I stopped chasing trades, my results changed overnight. My winning trades became bigger. My losing trades became smaller. Not because I suddenly became brilliant, but because I stopped forcing outcomes. I learned to let the market reveal its hand before showing mine. And when I finally did act, it wasn't out of emotion. It was out of clarity. That's the paradox of trading. The less you do, the more you make. The calmer you are, the clearer the picture becomes. Because when you stop trying to impose your will on the market, you start to see it for what it truly is. A reflection of collective psychology. A mirror of human behavior. I remember one particular day when the entire room was panicking. Prices were collapsing, traders were shouting, phones were ringing non-stop. I sat there watching, silent. My heart wanted to react, to join the chaos, but I forced myself to wait. I waited until the panic reached its peak. And then, when everyone else was selling in fear, I bought. Not because I was reckless, but because I had learned to recognize the sound of exhaustion in the market's voice. That trade became one of my biggest wins. But the real victory wasn't in the profit. It was in the control. I had finally mastered the impulse to act without reason. You see, trading is less about intelligence and more about temperament. It's not about how much you know, but how much discipline you have when everything goes wrong. Can you stay calm when your screen is bleeding red? Can you trust your plan when your emotions are screaming for you to abandon it? Can you stand still when the crowd is running in every direction? Those are the questions that define a trader. It took me years to learn that the market's greatest gift is not money. It's self-awareness. It shows you who you are when everything is on the line. It exposes every weakness, every fear, every ounce of arrogance. It humbles you, breaks you, rebuilds you. And if you stay in the game long enough, it teaches you patience, humility, and respect, the three pillars of survival. But make no mistake, the market is a ruthless teacher. It gives the test first and the lesson later. It rewards the disciplined and destroys the careless. It doesn't care how many times you've won. One lapse in judgment can erase a year's worth of progress. That's why the best traders I've ever known aren't the loudest or the most confident. They're the calmest. They understand that in this business, survival comes first. Because once you learn to survive, success becomes inevitable. I stopped trying to make every trade a winner. I stopped trying to be right all the time. I focused instead on being consistent, on protecting my capital, on managing my risk. I started to think of my money not as ammunition, but as oxygen. Every unnecessary trade was a wasted breath. Every emotional decision was suffocation. My goal was no longer to get rich quickly. It was to stay in the game long enough for the odds to reward me. And when I made that shift, everything changed. I began to feel detached. Not from passion, but from emotion. Wins no longer inflated my ego, losses no longer shattered my confidence. I became a student of the market's rhythm, an observer instead of a chaser. I learned to trust my preparation more than my impulses. I learned to wait for the silence between the waves. Because that's where the truth hides. There's a kind of beauty in that stillness. The kind of peace only those who've been broken by volatility can understand. You stop needing constant confirmation. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to win every time. You just start doing what's right. And that's when the wins begin to come naturally. You learn a lot about yourself when the market goes silent. Those days when the tape barely moves, when the world outside feels impatient, that's when you start hearing the real noise. The noise inside your own head. Doubt, greed, boredom. They all come crawling back, whispering that you should just take a trade. That silence became my greatest teacher. It forced me to listen to something deeper than the market. My own intuition. The kind of intuition that isn't emotional, but sharpened through experience and pain. For a while, I stopped chasing every flicker of opportunity. I started thinking like a hunter, not a gambler. The hunter doesn't move on every rustle in the bushes. He waits for certainty, for alignment, for the right moment when patience turns into precision. That shift changed everything. I began to see that the market wasn't random chaos. It had rhythm, tempo, emotion. It moved like the tide, pulling back before surging forward. And my job wasn't to fight it. My job was to feel it. The funny thing about success is that it doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, hidden inside ordinary days. One day you look back and realize that the storm that used to terrify you now feels like part of your natural environment. The panic that once ruled your decisions now feels like background noise. That's what mastery is. Not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. When you've lost enough, you stop fearing loss. You respect it. You measure it, but it no longer controls you. There was a time when I'd wake up desperate to make money. Every morning felt like a battle for survival. But the deeper I went into this game, the more I understood. You don't trade for money. You trade for discipline. Money is the by-product, not the goal. The goal is control. Over your emotions, over your reactions, over that little voice inside your head that screams for instant gratification. Every tick on the tape became a test of my self-control, and every moment of restraint became a quiet victory. You can't imagine how dangerous success can be when you haven't learned humility. The market has a way of seducing you after a big win. It tells you that you've cracked the code, that you've outsmarted the game itself. But the moment you believe that, you've already started losing. I learned that lesson in the hardest possible way. There was a trade, a massive one. Everything lined up perfectly. I entered with full conviction, leveraged high, and for days the market moved exactly as I predicted. My confidence turned to pride, and my pride turned to blindness. I ignored the signals that told me to exit. I ignored the quiet voice of reason. And then, in one violent move, the market reversed. I watched my profit evaporate in front of my eyes, and then my capital followed it into the void. It wasn't just a financial loss. It was spiritual. I'd been humbled again, and I needed it. After that, I made myself a promise. Never again would I let excitement dictate my trades. I would learn to love boredom, to embrace stillness, to be comfortable doing nothing when there was nothing to do. That's when I truly began to understand what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs trade because they want action. Professionals trade because they found alignment between conviction and patience. It's funny how the hardest lessons are the simplest ones. Buy right, sit tight. It sounds easy, but it took me years to live by it. The market pays the patient, not the active. And yet, patience feels like doing nothing, which is the hardest thing for a human being to accept. Our instinct is to interfere, to tweak, to control. But markets don't reward interference. They reward observation. My best trades were never the ones I micromanaged. They were the ones I let breathe. The ones I held through doubt, through noise, through temporary reversals, because I trusted my rid more than my fear. With time, I realized that trading wasn't about prediction. It was about reaction. The market doesn't care about your opinions. It doesn't care about your feelings or your theories. It moves according to its own logic. And the sooner you accept that, the freer you become. My job was never to control it, only to synchronize with it, to move when it moved, to rest when it rested. Once I accepted that, everything became simpler. Not easier, just clearer. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit alone in my office, the ticker silent, the lamps dimmed, and I'd think about the thousands of traders out there doing exactly what I used to do. Chasing, hoping, overtrading. I wished I could tell them what I had learned, that the secret isn't in the charts or the numbers, but in the silence between trades. That the real victory isn't when you win a trade, but when you resist a bad one. That's the battle no one sees, the inner one. As the years passed, I began to recognize patterns not just in prices, but in people. The same emotions repeating generation after generation: greed, fear, impatience. Technology changed, markets evolved, but human nature remained the same. Every trader thought they were different, but the story was always identical. That's why history keeps repeating itself. Not because the market forgets, but because people do. And every new trader, full of hope and arrogance, must learn the same lessons we all did, through pain. But there's beauty in that pain. It refines you. It shapes your instincts, your timing, your confidence. Every loss you survive makes you stronger. Every failure sharpens your perception. And if you can endure long enough, you reach a point where trading stops being about winning. It becomes about understanding. Understanding the rhythm of the market, the rhythm of yourself. That's where the easy wins come from. Not because they're truly easy, but because they're natural. They flow from alignment, not force. Looking back, I realized that all my greatest breakthroughs came right after my biggest defeats. Every collapse was a reset, a chance to rebuild with greater clarity. The market has no mercy, but it also has no malice. It doesn't punish you out of spite. It simply reflects what you haven't yet learned. That's why you can't hate it. You can only respect it. The market is the greatest teacher I've ever known. Ruthless, honest, unrelenting. And if you listen closely enough, it will teach you everything you need to know about yourself. Even today, after all these years, I approach every trade with the same humility I wish I'd had from the start. I never assume I'm right. I never assume the market owes me anything. I just wait, observe, and act when the moment feels inevitable. When every piece of logic, instinct, and timing aligns, that's when the easy wins appear. They're not easy because the market made them so. They're easy because I did the hard work long before I entered. I trained my patience. I silenced my impulses. I learned to sit still. If there's one truth I could pass on to every trader who ever dreams of success, it's this. The market rewards those who are prepared to suffer through silence. The profits come to those who can endure boredom without forcing action. The secret isn't hidden in some indicator or algorithm. It's inside you. In your ability to wait, to trust, to detach. You're not trying to conquer the market. You're trying to conquer yourself. And that is the real secret behind easy wins. They come only to those who've survived the hard ones. There comes a time in every trader's life when you stop measuring success by profit and start measuring it by peace. I didn't understand that when I was young. Back then, peace was a foreign concept. The chase was everything. I thought I needed excitement, volatility, constant motion. But what I really needed was stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from the market, but from within. The kind that only comes after you've lost everything that ever made you restless. You see, I've stood at both ends of the spectrum. I've been broke enough to wonder where my next meal would come from, and I've been rich enough to buy anything I desired, but neither extreme brought happiness. When I had nothing, I longed for success. When I had success, I longed for simplicity. It's a cruel joke life plays on you. You spend half your time chasing what you think will free you, only to realize freedom was the thing you abandoned along the way. In my later years, I started to notice something strange. Every mistake I had ever made, every ruin, every loss, didn't come from ignorance of the market. It came from ignorance of myself. The charts never lied to me. The prices never hid the truth. The deception always came from within, from hope, from fear, from the need to prove I was right. I wasn't fighting numbers, I was fighting my own reflection. I used to believe the market could be beaten. That with enough study, enough experience, enough courage, a man could outwit it. But I was wrong. The market isn't something to conquer. It's something to understand. You don't fight the ocean. You learn to swim in its tides. You don't control the wind. You adjust your sails. And once you stop fighting, once you start listening, everything changes. The noise fades. The rhythm reveals itself. There was a time when I thought discipline meant denying yourself, suppressing emotion, avoiding risk, hiding from temptation. But true discipline isn't about denial. It's about direction. It's not saying no to everything. It's saying yes, only to the right things. The discipline to act when the moment demands it. The discipline to wait when the world screams for action. That's the balance most traders never find, because they're too busy reacting to every flicker of movement. I've often been asked what my greatest trade was. People expect me to name some massive short or a legendary bull run. But the truth is, my greatest trade was internal. It was learning to master myself. Learning to walk away when my instincts were clouded. Learning to stop when greed whispered that there was more to be made. That's the hardest trade any man can execute. The one where you choose restraint over reward. The market, over time, teaches humility in the harshest way possible. It doesn't care how smart you are, how successful you were, or how big your last win was. It has no memory, no loyalty, no mercy. The moment you start believing you're special, it reminds you that you're not. And yet, that's what makes it so pure. There's a strange honesty in that indifference. The market doesn't flatter you. It doesn't lie. It simply reflects who you are, over and over. Until you finally understand. When I was young, I thought trading was about prediction. Later, I thought it was about timing. But in truth, it's about survival. Staying in the game long enough to learn what others never live long enough to see. Every great trader I've ever known wasn't great because of one lucky trade. They were great because they lasted. They endured the storms, the loneliness, the uncertainty. They didn't chase every move. They preserved themselves for the moves that mattered. There were days when I'd walk through Wall Street and see faces I used to know. Men who once stood tall, now broken, lost in the same city that once celebrated them. The market gives you fame with one hand and takes your sanity with the other. And if you're not careful, you'll let it consume you. You'll lose not just your money, but your sense of self. I've seen it happen too many times. I've felt it happen to me. I won't pretend that I always lived by the wisdom I preach. There were moments when I failed myself, when I let the same emotions I thought I'd mastered drag me back into the fire. The truth is, you never fully conquer your nature. You only learn to recognize its voice and to pause before obeying it. Every day you trade, you're not just fighting the market, you're fighting your instincts. And the moment you forget that, you lose. But even in those moments of failure, I found clarity. Because every fall revealed another piece of the truth. The truth that markets don't create character, they reveal it. That no system, no method, no genius can save you from yourself. You can have the best information in the world and still fail if you can't control your impulses. And you can have only half the facts and still win if your discipline is unshakable. That's the paradox. Success in trading has very little to do with what you know and everything to do with who you are. If I could speak to the young trader I once was, that impatient boy watching the ticker tape, I'd tell him this: slow down. You don't have to trade every day. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. The market will still be here tomorrow, and the only thing that matters is that you are too. I'd tell him that the easy wins aren't easy at all. They're earned through years of endurance, humility, and self-control. I'd tell him that it's okay to fail, as long as you learn faster than you break. Sometimes I think about all the lessons the market has given me. The fortunes made and lost, the sleepless nights, the triumphs that turned to dust. And yet, I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything, because through them, I found truth. Not about trading, but about life. The same principles apply everywhere. Patience, discipline, detachment. Whether it's the market, business, or love, the same forces that move prices also move people. Fear and greed, hope and despair. The endless struggle between impulse and reason. In the end, that's what makes trading more than a profession. It's a mirror of existence itself. Every decision reflects who you are in that moment. Every loss humbles you. Every win tests your gratitude. And if you listen carefully, if you really pay attention, you begin to see that the market isn't random at all. It's a living, breathing reflection of human emotion. Now, when I look back, I realize the irony of it all. The easy wins I chased for years were never easy because of luck or timing. They became easy only when I stopped chasing them, when I stopped needing to prove myself, when I began to respect the flow of the market and align with it instead of fighting it. That's when the trades started to come naturally, almost effortlessly, because I had finally learned the hardest lesson of all: to let go. So if you take anything from my life, let it be this: The market will always be there, calling, tempting, testing. But you don't have to answer every time. Learn to wait for your moment, and when it comes, act with quiet conviction. And when it's gone, don't chase it. Another one will come. It always does. The secret behind easy wins isn't hidden in any book, formula, or chart. It's in the silence between decisions. It's in the patience that feels like pain. It's in the self-control that costs you pride, but saves your fortune. And if you can master that, the market will reward you not just with profit, but with peace. Because in the end, the real victory isn't in beating the market. It's in mastering the man in the mirror. There's a quiet that settles over you when you've lived long enough to see the same story play out again and again. You stop reacting to it. You stop being surprised by it. You simply nod, knowing that every man, no matter how brilliant or brave, must face his own reflection in the market's mirror. I've watched generations of traders come and go, each believing they've found a new path, a smarter way, a secret shortcut. But the truth never changes. The tools evolve, the language shifts, the data becomes faster, but human nature remains the same. And as long as human nature exists, the market will always have the upper hand. When I first began, I thought success meant wealth. I thought if I made enough, I'd finally be free. But now, after a lifetime of chasing and losing and learning, I realize success has nothing to do with money. It's about mastery, not of markets, but of mind. Because when you master your mind, you master everything else. The man who can sit still while others panic, who can stay humble after a victory, who can think clearly when the world is loud. That man doesn't just win trades. He wins life. If I could go back to the beginning, I'd tell myself to slow down and listen more. The market speaks, not through noise, but through rhythm. Through the quiet movements between chaos and calm. I used to think trading was about predicting what would happen next. Now I know it's about recognizing what's already happening and aligning with it. You don't force success, you prepare for it. You don't chase opportunity, you wait for it to reveal itself to the prepared mind. There's a saying that stayed with me all my life. Speculation is as old as the hills. And it's true. People will always believe they can outsmart the tide. They'll always believe this time is different. But the truth is, it never is. The names change, the faces change, but the emotions are timeless. The same greed that drove men in my era still drives men today. The same fear that broke fortunes then still breaks them now. The market is simply a reflection of the human soul. Magnified, unfiltered, and mercilessly honest. I've often wondered why, despite all the knowledge we've gathered, most people still fail in the market. It's not because they lack information. It's because they lack control. They don't lose to the market. They lose to themselves. They make a plan, then abandon it the moment emotion enters the room. They say they'll cut losses quickly, then hesitate. They say they'll let profits run, then panic and sell too soon. They live in constant conflict between logic and emotion. And that conflict is the silent destroyer of trading accounts. In my later years, I found that the real work of trading begins long before the trade. It begins with preparation, clarity, and patience. The battle isn't fought on the charts. It's fought in the mind. Every great trade I ever made was the result of waiting, observing, and allowing the market to confirm what I already suspected. I used to feel restless when nothing was happening. Now I know that's when the real progress is made, in the waiting. Because when the moment finally arrives, it feels effortless. It's no longer a guess. It's recognition. There's a beauty in simplicity that most traders never see. Everyone wants complexity, systems, signals, secret formulas. But simplicity is where truth hides. Buy strength, sell weakness. Cut losses fast, let winners run. Be patient, be humble. Those rules are simple, but living by them is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Because simplicity demands discipline, and discipline demands humility. The market rewards humility and punishes ego. Every time. When I look back on my life, I see a story not of profits and losses, but of lessons and evolution. Each rise taught me confidence, each fall taught me character. I've come to realize that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. Every mistake brings you closer to mastery if you're humble enough to learn from it. The problem is, most people are so ashamed of their mistakes that they never study them. They bury them. They pretend they never happened. But your mistakes are your teachers. Ignore them, and you'll repeat them. Listen to them, and they'll shape you into someone unshakable. There were days I felt unstoppable, when every trade hit, every move flowed. And there were days I felt cursed, when every decision backfired. But through it all, I learned one unbreakable truth: the market owes you nothing. It doesn't care if you've had a bad week. It doesn't care if you deserve a win. The market is neither friend nor enemy. It's simply there, reflecting your actions, amplifying your psychology. The moment you expect fairness, you've already lost. And yet, in that indifference lies the beauty of the game. Because the market treats everyone the same. It doesn't care about your past. It doesn't care about your reputation. It doesn't care about your mistakes. Every morning, it gives you a clean slate, a fresh chance to do things right. Few professions in the world offer that kind of redemption every single day. But the price of that redemption is discipline, and most aren't willing to pay it. I've been asked before if I have any regrets. I suppose I do. Not for the money I lost. I could always make more. My regret is the time I lost chasing something I didn't understand. I chased freedom in all the wrong places. I thought freedom was in the fortune. But true freedom is the ability to walk away, to let go, to not need the market to validate your worth. That's the kind of freedom only experience, and a few heartbreaks, can teach you. Sometimes I wonder what I'd tell the next generation of traders if I had one last chance to speak. I'd tell them not to idolize the wins, but to study the losses. I'd tell them to stop chasing shortcuts and start building patience. I'd tell them that consistency is far more valuable than brilliance. The world is full of talented traders who burn bright and vanish. But it's the disciplined ones who endure. The ones who learn to make boredom their ally, who can go days without action, who treat the market like a marathon, not a sprint. Those are the ones who survive. I'd tell them to trust their own judgment, but to question their own emotions. To be bold enough to act, but wise enough to pause. To never seek certainty, only probability. Because in this business, there are no guarantees, only edges. And your edge isn't your system or your analysis. It's your state of mind. Protect that, and you'll always have a chance. Lose it, and no system in the world will save you. If I've learned anything, it's that every trader's journey is really just a search for balance, between fear and courage, between patience and action, between knowing and not knowing. You never truly master it. You just learn to live closer to the center, and that's enough. because in that balance lies peace. And peace is the one thing the market can never take from you. As I sit here now, looking back across the years, I can almost hear the echo of the ticker tape. That endless stream of numbers that once ruled my life. It no longer calls to me the way it used to. It's quieter now, softer. Maybe because I finally learned to listen to something louder. My own silence. The same silence I once feared is now the thing I cherish most. Because it's in that silence that I find the truth I chased all my life. The truth that the market was never my enemy. It was my mirror. It showed me who I really was. Every flaw, every weakness, every illusion. And in that reflection, through pain and patience, I found clarity. So, if you ever step into this world, if you ever decide to walk this path, remember what I've learned too late. Don't chase the market. Don't chase wealth. Chase understanding. Chase discipline. Because the moment you master yourself, the market becomes effortless. The wins come naturally. The fear fades. The noise disappears, and maybe then, like me, you'll finally understand the real secret behind easy wins. They're never easy. They're earned. And the man who earns them doesn't just beat the market. He becomes something greater. He becomes free.